The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer was a fascinating thinker because he was perhaps the first to combine both Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy into his philosophical works. He believed human existence to be one of inevitable, meaningless suffering, and that Western philosophy was incapable of providing a solution to this problem. Instead, he proposed a way to minimize life suffering and hardship rooted in Eastern thought, specifically in the writings of the ancient Upanishads. This video will first do a concise overview of why Schopenhauer believed life to be unending suffering and craving, cover his Eastern philosophical solution to reduce life suffering, and my thoughts on how correct and relevant his philosophy is today. In his work, The World as Will and Representation, he believed humanity and the entire universe to be a manifestation of something he called the will, or the will to live, a blind impulse or force outside space and time characterized by a relentless striving. Because the will has no ultimate goal or purpose, human existence is one of insatiable striving, we being manifestations of the will. We're always motivated by cravings, such as the need to satiate feelings of hunger, thirst, propagation, the need to achieve, and more, which he saw arising from the will. When we fail to satiate our need or fulfill a desire we have, humans become frustrated, resulting in suffering. When we do fulfill a desire, one of two things happens, he thought. Number one, we just immediately go back to craving or striving for something else to make us feel happy or at peace. Or number two, we become bored with life. Once the novelty of achieving our goal and being free from the craving wears off, we succumb to boredom, eventually giving way to craving and desire again. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom, he wrote. Humans who relentlessly chase happiness and lasting meaning are fools, he thought, as this feeling is just a fleeting one, if there is one at all. Optimism is not only a false but a pernicious doctrine, for it presents life as a desirable state and man's happiness as its aim and object. Starting from this, everyone then believes he has the most legitimate claim to happiness and enjoyment. If, as usually happens, these do not fall to his lot, he believes that he suffers an injustice, in fact, that he misses the whole point of his existence. So, if human existence is fundamentally one of striving and insatiable craving, how do we find peace while we live? Schopenhauer provided two solutions, a temporary one of aesthetics and art, and a lasting one of asceticism. First, he believed that by gazing and contemplating beautiful and stunning works of art, we can temporarily suspend the will, and thus craving and suffering. It is through ascetic perception that the transcendence of the ego can manifest itself, for with ascetics, that is, any object, person, or art form, we can evaluate an idea beyond our earthly interpretation of reality. See, like Plato, Schopenhauer believed an archetype or perfect form of an object existed on a higher plane of existence, like the perfect chair or the perfect tree. These lay outside space and time, and thus the will. For instance, when gazing at a magnificent specific tree, we would perceive shining through that tree the archetype of all trees in an appreciation of that tree that was, is, or will be. In that moment, the will and the ego vanished temporarily and were left in peace and awe. Music, he thought, was perhaps the best form of art that transcended the ego and brought us closer to these Platonic ideas. On the occurrence of an aesthetic appreciation, the will thereby vanishes entirely from consciousness. So one ought to fill their life with beautiful art and music. However, these are just short-lived experiences at best. That's why he proposed a more serious solution, asceticism, or the practice of self-denial characterized by living a life free of pleasure and desires. He was inspired to come to this conclusion from reading the Upanishads, which are late Vedic Sanskrit texts of religious teachings that formed Hinduism's foundations. After reading the ancient Eastern text, he called it the production of the highest human wisdom. He thought that the only way to true peace is to free ourselves of the craving and thus the will. To achieve true peace, one must stop giving into temptations and cravings of the will and live like a solitary hermit, free of sensual wants and material possessions. These, after all, don't actually give us happiness and peace. They are just illusions of happiness born out of insatiable striving. However, the fight against the will, he surmised, is a fight against the very foundation of nature itself, and most people didn't have it in them to live that type of life. When one begins to stop responding to the striving of the will successfully, they transcend nature and enter a mystical state of consciousness, he thought. He described this mystical state of consciousness as a gently moving ocean of tranquility and where the will has vanished and the physical world is nothing. Okay, so that's Schopenhauer's answer to the problem of suffering in life. Now, how relevant is this answer today, and was he correct? Well, first, it's important to point out that Schopenhauer, like many esteemed philosophers and thinkers throughout history, didn't exactly follow the advice he gave to others. Historians note that he had several affairs up until late in life while he was supposedly advocating for asceticism. In fact, his fellow philosopher Bertrand Russell, in his work The History of Western Philosophy, criticized Schopenhauer for being a hypocrite. Although he clearly didn't live a life of strict asceticism like the Buddha tried, it could be said that he may have attempted to embrace a lighter type, a tradition found in the Upanishads called sannyasa, which involves living a simple solitary life, one with minimal or no material possessions, study, meditation, and ethical living. Scholars believed he was more influenced by the Upanishads than Buddhist teachings, after all. Perhaps more importantly, can any of these solutions he gave help us? Many studies and personal accounts of incorporating beautiful art and music into one's life make life satisfaction go up, although I don't think we enter any Platonic realm. So go ahead and visit an art museum or listen to more music you enjoy throughout life. Strict asceticism, where we attempt to break and suppress our natural desires, not so much. The Buddha himself, in an attempt to rid himself of suffering, adopted a very strict ascetic lifestyle. He took it so far as writers claim he became severely emaciated and even tried to control his own thoughts even. He concluded the experiment a failure, and it was later on he theoretically achieved enlightenment through insight meditation primarily. Living a lifestyle free from overindulgence can help subjective well-being, it appears, but strict asceticism, similar to what monks do, has no backing or evidence that it can help the majority of people who practice it have significantly better well-being in their life. However, just because Schopenhauer wasn't exactly correct doesn't mean Eastern philosophy can improve our well-being. He might have been on the right track after all. This includes serious investigations of phenomenological experiences of consciousness supposedly achieved by the Buddha and others. Now, these are seriously worth exploring as a real solution to drastically increasing human subjective well-being and decreasing suffering, which I can go into if anyone wants. Now, let me know your thoughts on Schopenhauer, his philosophy, and anything covered in this video below in the comments. Do you think he was right or wrong? And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe for more videos like it using the link in the description and turn on the notification bell to receive updates when new videos come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.